The first splash of river water against Arabella Carter's riding boots came as an unwelcome shock, reminding her that the spring runoff had turned what should have been a shallow crossing into something far more treacherous on this warm May morning in 1882. She pulled hard on the reins of her father's loaded supply wagon, feeling the wheels slip against the rocky riverbed as the current pushed harder than she had anticipated. Behind her, secured under canvas, rode $2,000 worth of fine fabrics, spices, and imported goods destined for her father's mercantile in Leadville, Colorado. The water crept higher up the wagon wheels with each passing second, and Arabella realized with growing alarm that she had made a terrible miscalculation. The Arkansas River ran swift and cold this time of year, fed by mountain snowmelt that turned its normally placid waters into something wild and unpredictable. Arabella had crossed this particular ford a dozen times before, always with her father or one of his hired men, but never alone. At 22 years old, she had insisted she was capable of making the supply run to Colorado Springs by herself, eager to prove her worth to a father who still treated her like a child. Now, as the wagon lurched sideways and the horses whinnied in panic, she wondered if perhaps he had been right to doubt her. The cold water soaked through her navy traveling dress, weighing down the heavy fabric as she stood on the wagon seat, trying to get a better view of the opposite bank. She could see it clearly, tantalizingly close, but the current had pushed her off course. The wagon tilted at an alarming angle and one of the horses lost its footing entirely, thrashing in the traces. "Easy now," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear climbing up her throat. Easy, but the horses were beyond listening, driven to panic by the rushing water and the unstable footing beneath them. The wagon lurched again, harder this time, and Arabella felt her grip on the reins slipping. She was going to lose it all, the wagon, the merchandise, possibly her life if she could not regain control. That was when she heard the thunder of hoofbeats approaching from the northern bank, followed by a man's voice cutting through the roar of the river. "Hold steady. Don't pull back on those reins." Arabella turned her head to see a rider plunging into the water without hesitation, his black gelding cutting through the current with powerful strides. The man sat tall in the saddle, his dark brown hat pulled low, his weathered duster coat spreading out behind him like wings as he navigated the treacherous crossing with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times before. He reached her wagon in moments, his horse positioning itself upstream to break the worst of the current. Up close, Arabella could see he was perhaps 25 or 26, with strong features tanned dark from the sun and eyes the color of storm clouds. A few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and wet dark hair curled against his neck where it escaped from beneath his hat. "Give me the reins," he shouted over the water's roar, reaching out one gloved hand. "I can manage," Arabella started to say, but another lurch of the wagon cut off her protest. "No time for pride, miss. Hand them over unless you want to swim to shore." Something in his tone, commanding but not unkind, made her comply. She passed him the leather reins, and he immediately wrapped them around his saddle horn, using his mount's strength to help steady the panicked team. With his free hand, he pulled a rope from his saddle and tossed one end to Arabella. "Tie that to your wagon frame, somewhere strong. Quick now." Her fingers fumbled with the wet rope, but she managed to secure it to the iron reinforcement bar her father had installed for exactly this kind of emergency. The stranger secured his end to his saddle, and suddenly his horse was pulling, muscles straining as it fought against the current. "Talk to your horses," he called to her. "They know your voice. Keep them calm." Arabella obeyed, calling out encouragement to the matched pair of bays that had served her father faithfully for 3 years. Whether it was her voice or the stranger's expert handling, something shifted. The horses found their footing, stopped fighting the current, and began to move forward with purpose. The wagon wheels caught on solid rock instead of slippery mud, and inch by inch, they made progress toward the far bank. It felt like an eternity, but was probably no more than 5 minutes before the wagon rolled up onto dry land, water streaming from its undercarriage. Arabella's legs shook as she climbed down from the seat, her waterlogged skirts clinging to her legs and making every movement difficult. The stranger dismounted and immediately moved to check her horses, running experienced hands over their legs and speaking to them in low, soothing tones. "They will be fine," he said after a thorough inspection. "Scared but sound. You were lucky. Thanks to you." Arabella pushed wet strands of dark auburn hair away from her face, suddenly aware of how bedraggled she must look. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not come along when you did. You would have lost the wagon, most likely." He straightened up, meeting her eyes directly. "What in the name of all that is holy were you thinking, trying to cross alone during runoff season?" The criticism stung, partially because Arabella knew he was right. "I have crossed here many times before. The water was not this high yesterday when I passed through. Weather changes fast in the mountains this time of year. One warm day melts enough snow to raise the river 2 feet. He began untying his rope from her wagon. "Where are you headed?" "Leadville. My father owns Carter's Mercantile on Harrison Avenue." "I was returning from Colorado Springs with supplies." The stranger's eyebrows rose slightly. "Thomas Carter's daughter. I have bought supplies from his store. Name is Quinn Zeller. I have a small ranch about 10 miles north of town, up in the high country." Arabella Carter. She attempted a smile despite her chattering teeth. "And I am extremely grateful to you, Mr. Zeller. If there is any way I can repay you, no need." He coiled his rope efficiently and secured it back on his saddle. "But I would feel better riding escort with you the rest of the way to Leadville. That sun is warm now, but you are soaked through, and we have got at least 2 hours ahead of us. You will want to keep moving so you do not catch a chill." Arabella wanted to protest that she could manage the rest of the journey alone, but the truth was she felt shaken by the near disaster. Besides, there was something reassuring about Quinn Zeller's calm competence. He had handled the emergency without fuss or bravado, simply doing what needed to be done. "I would appreciate the company," she admitted. They set out together, Quinn keeping his black gelding at an easy pace beside her wagon. The morning sun climbed higher, bringing genuine warmth that helped combat the chill of her wet clothing. Steam rose from the horses' backs as they plodded along the rutted road that wound through stands of pine and aspen. "How long have you had your ranch?" Arabella asked, feeling the need to fill the companionable silence with conversation. "Going on 4 years now. Bought it from a prospector who decided he preferred looking for silver to raising cattle. It is not much, just a small herd and a cabin, but it is mine." There was quiet pride in his voice that made Arabella glance over at him with new interest. "Cattle ranching is difficult work, from what I understand. Honest work, though. I like being my own man, making my own decisions." He adjusted his hat against the sun's glare. "Spent too many years working for other people, following orders I did not always agree with." "You were a soldier." "Cavalry, yes. Got out 5 years back and decided to head west, see if I could make something of myself." He paused, then asked, "What about you? Does your father approve of you making supply runs on your own?" Arabella felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. "He does not know. He thinks I am visiting my aunt in Colorado Springs for a few days. I wanted to show him I could handle the business side of things, not just keeping the books and minding the shop counter. To her surprise, Quinn laughed, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I expect he is going to figure it out when you roll up with a wagon full of supplies you supposedly did not go to fetch. I had a speech prepared, Arabella admitted ruefully. It sounded much more convincing before I nearly drowned in the Arkansas River. The river has a way of humbling a person. No shame in that. He grew more serious. Though I hope you will take a lesson from this. The country out here does not care about your good intentions. It will kill you just as quick whether you are trying to prove something or not. They rode on, following the road as it climbed gradually into the higher elevations where Leadville perched at over 10,000 feet above sea level. The landscape shifted from pine forests to more open terrain, dotted with mining operations. They passed several prospectors leading mules laden with equipment, and a freight wagon heading in the opposite direction, its driver tipping his hat to Arabella as they passed. "Your father has a good reputation in town," Quinn said after they had been traveling for about an hour. "Fair prices, honest dealing. That matters in a place like Leadville where plenty of folks are looking to make a quick dollar off the miners. He has always believed in treating people right, regardless of whether they are wealthy mine owners or common laborers." Arabella felt a surge of affection for her father, mixed with guilt for deceiving him. He came out here in '77 when the silver boom really started, built the store from nothing and sent for my mother and me a year later when he had established himself. Your mother is in Leadville too. She passed away 2 winters ago, pneumonia. The familiar ache settled in Arabella's chest, duller now than in those first raw months but never entirely gone. It has been just my father and me since then. I think that is part of why he is so protective. He already lost her. "I am sorry for your loss." Quinn's voice held genuine sympathy. "My own mother died when I was young. It is a hard thing." They fell into a more contemplative silence, but it felt comfortable rather than awkward. Arabella found herself studying Quinn from the corner of her eye, noting the easy way he sat his horse, the unconscious competence in how he scanned their surroundings, always aware. There was something solid about him, trustworthy. She had met plenty of men in Leadville, from smooth-talking salesmen to rough miners to would-be suitors hoping to gain access to her father's business connections. Quinn seemed different from all of them, more genuine somehow. "You come into town often?" she asked, then immediately felt foolish at how the question sounded. If Quinn noticed any awkwardness, he did not show it. "Once or twice a month for supplies and to sell beef when I have any ready. It is a half-day's ride from my place, so I tend to make a list and do everything in one trip." "You must get lonely, living so far from town," he shrugged. "I've got my horses and cattle for company, and the solitude suits me mostly. Too many years of being crowded into army barracks and camps. I like having space to breathe, to think. Though I will admit, sometimes it would be nice to have someone to share a meal with, have a conversation that is not with a horse." Arabella laughed. "Do your horses offer good conversation, better than some people I have known if I am being honest?" His eyes crinkled with humor again. "They are excellent listeners, never interrupt, and they have strong opinions about feeding schedules. Important qualities in a conversationalist." They crested a rise, and Leadville spread out before them in the valley below, a sprawling collection of wooden buildings and mine works that had sprung up practically overnight when silver had been discovered in the surrounding mountains. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys despite the warm day, and the distant sounds of industry echoed up to them, hammers on metal, the rumble of ore wagons, the sharp reports of blasting powder in the mines. "Almost home," Quinn observed. though I expect you have got some explaining to do." "Do not remind me." Arabella squared her shoulders. "But I would make the same choice again, even knowing what happened at the river. I need my father to see me as a capable adult, not just his little girl. From what I saw today, you kept your head in a dangerous situation. That speaks to capability, though perhaps next time check the river conditions first. Wise advice." She glanced over at him as they started down toward town. "Will you let me at least buy you dinner, as thanks for your help? The hotel restaurant serves a decent meal." Quinn hesitated, and for a moment Arabella thought he might refuse. Then he nodded. "I would like that, though I should warn you I am not much for fancy company. I will probably use the wrong fork and tell inappropriate stories. I think I can survive the scandal." She felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach that had nothing to do with nervousness about facing her father. They entered Leadville through the main street, and Arabella was immediately aware of the curious looks from townspeople who knew her. A young woman riding alone with a cowboy was not exactly scandalous, but it would certainly provide fuel for gossip. She kept her chin high and her eyes forward, though she caught sight of Mrs. Patterson from the dress shop practically pressing her nose against her window to get a better view. Carter's Mercantile stood on Harrison Avenue, a solid two-story structure with large windows displaying merchandise and living quarters above where Arabella and her father resided. As they pulled up in front, the door flew open and Thomas Carter himself emerged, his weathered face creased with worry. "Arabella, thank God you are safe. Where have you been?" "Your aunt sent a telegram saying you never arrived, and I have been out of my mind." He stopped abruptly, taking in her disheveled, still damp appearance and the loaded wagon. His expression shifted from relief to understanding to anger in quick succession. "What have you done?" "I went to Colorado Springs for supplies," Arabella said, climbing down from the wagon seat with as much dignity as she could muster. "I wanted to show you I could handle it. By lying to me, by risking your life." Thomas's face had gone red. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that trip is alone?" "Anything could have happened." "Something did happen," Quinn interjected quietly, dismounting. "She ran into trouble at the Arkansas River crossing, high water from the runoff. I was able to help and she is safe now, but it was a near thing." Thomas turned his attention to Quinn, really seeing him for the first time. "You helped my daughter?" "Yes, sir. Quinn Zeller. I have a ranch north of here. I was heading into town when I came across her in the river." "Then I owe you my deepest gratitude, Mr. Zeller." Thomas shook Quinn's hand firmly. "If anything had happened to her—" His voice cracked slightly, and he turned back to Arabella with moisture in his eyes. "You are all I have left, girl. Do not you understand that?" The anger drained out of Arabella, replaced by remorse. She stepped forward and embraced her father. "I am sorry, Papa. I truly am. I just wanted to prove I could be useful, that I could do more than keep books and stack shelves." Thomas held her tightly for a moment, then released her with a sigh. "We will discuss this later. Right now, let us get this wagon unloaded and the goods checked. If you went to all this trouble and expense, I suppose we should make use of it." He looked at Quinn. "Mr. Zeller, I would be honored if you would join us for supper tonight. It is the least I can do." "Miss Carter already extended an invitation, sir. I would be glad to accept." "Good, good." Thomas was already moving toward the wagon, pulling back the canvas to inspect the contents. Despite his earlier anger, Arabella could see approval in his eyes as he examined her purchases. "These are quality goods, excellent choices. The fabric alone will sell well with the mine owners' wives. Though next time, please, for the love of all that is holy, do not sneak off to do this alone." "Next time I will tell you what I am planning," Arabella agreed. "And perhaps take someone with me." "Damned right you will." Thomas caught himself. Pardon my language. Quinn helped them unload the wagon, proving himself as capable with merchandise as he was with horses and ropes. He carried the heavy bolts of fabric and crates of goods into the store without complaint, stacking them neatly where Thomas directed. Arabella changed into dry clothing in the upstairs apartment, trading her ruined traveling dress for a simple, but becoming cotton dress in pale green that brought out the hints of emerald in her hazel eyes. When she came back downstairs, Quinn was examining a display of tools with the attention of someone who actually understood their practical use. Her father stood behind the counter, clearly in the middle of a conversation with the younger man. "So you run cattle exclusively?" Thomas was asking. "For now, yes, sir. The ranch came with some decent grazing land, and there is a good spring that runs year-round. I have been building up the herd slowly, trying to do it right rather than rush it." Smart approach. Too many young men come out here thinking they will get rich quick and end up broke or dead within a year. Thomas glanced up, seeing Arabella on the stairs. "There is my girl. You look more like yourself now. I feel considerably better in dry clothes." She joined them at the counter. "Thank you again for your help with the unloading, Mr. Zeller. Quinn, please. And it was no trouble." He glanced out the window where the afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western peaks. "What time would you like me back for supper?" "Is 7 o'clock suitable?" Thomas asked. "That gives me time to finish here and Arabella time to prepare something worthy of our guest." 7 is perfect. I will find somewhere to stable my horse and get cleaned up." Quinn tipped his hat to them both and headed for the door, moving with an economy of motion that Arabella found herself admiring. After he left, Thomas turned to his daughter with a raised eyebrow. "He seems like a decent young man." "He is." Arabella felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He saved my life today, Papa, or at least saved everything I bought. Without him, I would have lost the wagon, the horses, all of it. Then we owe him more than just supper." Thomas's expression softened. "But that does not change the fact that you deceived me, Arabella. We will need to talk about that. I know, and I am truly sorry, but I am not sorry for proving I can do this work. You have always said you wanted to keep the business in the family. How can I learn if you will not let me try?" Thomas sighed, looking suddenly older and more tired. "Your mother would know what to say right now. She always did when it came to you. I just worry, girl. This is a rough country and you are all I have. Which is exactly why you need to teach me everything you know. What happens if something happens to you? How will I run the store if I have only ever been allowed to do the easy parts?" Arabella pressed her advantage gently. "I made some mistakes today, yes, but I also made good deals on the merchandise. I know I did. And next time I will know to check the river conditions and not be so stubborn about accepting help." "Next time," Thomas repeated with a shake of his head. "You are determined to give me gray hair, are not you? You are already mostly gray, Papa. Watch your tongue, girl." But he was smiling. "Go on, start preparing for supper, and make it good. That young man did us a considerable service today." Arabella headed upstairs to their small kitchen, her mind already planning the menu. They had a good supply of provisions, and she was a competent cook, having learned from her mother. She decided on roast chicken with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread, and an apple pie for dessert. It would take some time, but she had just enough to make it work. As she worked, her thoughts kept returning to Quinn Zeller. There had been something in his eyes, a steadiness and strength that appealed to her. She had known plenty of men in Leadville, but most were either rough miners with no interest in settling down or ambitious businessmen looking to marry into her father's success. Quinn seemed different, content with his modest ranch and simple life, yet clearly capable and intelligent. The afternoon passed in a flurry of cooking. Thomas came upstairs periodically to check on her progress and to continue their earlier conversation about the business. By the time 7 o'clock approached, something of a peace had been established between them. Thomas agreed to involve Arabella more in the buying decisions and supply runs, provided she promised to always take someone with her and to be honest about her plans. "I spent the last 2 years trying to keep you safe in a bubble, as if that would somehow make up for losing your mother," Thomas said as they set the table together. "But you are right that you are a grown woman now and you have a good head for business. We will find a way to make this work." "Thank you, Papa." Arabella hugged him quickly. "That means everything to me." A knock at the door announced Quinn's arrival exactly at 7. He had cleaned up considerably, his face freshly shaved and his hair still damp from washing. He wore clean clothes, dark trousers and a pressed white shirt with a simple vest, and he carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that he presented to Arabella with an almost shy expression. "Found these growing near where I stabled my horse. Thought they might brighten your table." "They are lovely, thank you." Arabella took the flowers, touched by the gesture. She arranged them quickly in a glass jar and set them in the center of the table. "Please sit down, everything is ready." The meal proved to be a success. The chicken was tender, the vegetables perfectly cooked, and the bread was still warm from the oven. Quinn ate with genuine appreciation, complimenting the food sincerely rather than with the flowery exaggeration of men trying to impress. The conversation flowed easily, moving from discussion of Quinn's ranch to Thomas's experiences establishing the store to the general growth and changes happening in Leadville. "The town is growing so fast. Sometimes I barely recognize it from one month to the next," Thomas observed. "Every silver strike brings in more people. We have got over 15,000 residents now, I have heard. Schools, churches, even an opera house being built." "Progress," Quinn said, though his tone suggested some ambivalence. "Though I will admit I prefer the country. Too many people makes me nervous after the army." "You served in the Indian Wars?" Thomas asked. "Some, though mostly I did garrison duty and escort work. Saw enough fighting to know I did not have the stomach for making a career of it." Quinn glanced at Arabella. "Your daughter mentioned you came out here in 77. "That is right. The silver discoveries had been confirmed, and I saw an opportunity. I had run a dry goods store in Missouri, but competition was fierce there. Out here, in a new boomtown, a man with capital and experience could establish himself quickly." Thomas leaned back in his chair. "It was not easy, mind you. Prices for everything were astronomical at first, and the elevation took some getting used to, but it paid off." "Papa worked 18-hour days that first year," Arabella added. "He still has some of the letters he sent to Mother and me. He would write them late at night by candlelight, telling us about the town and the people, promising it would be good once we could join him." "Your mother must have been a brave woman to pick up and move to a rough mining town," Quinn said. "She was brave in all the ways that mattered." Arabella's voice softened. "She never complained about leaving her friends and family in Missouri. She just packed up our lives and brought us out here because she believed in Papa's dream." "She sounds like she was a remarkable person," Quinn said gently. They lingered over apple pie and coffee, the conversation eventually turning to lighter topics. Quinn told amusing stories about his various misadventures learning to be a rancher, including a memorable incident involving a bull, a broken fence, and 3 days spent tracking the animal through the mountains before finally recapturing it. "I must have walked 20 miles in those 3 days," he said with a rueful shake of his head. "By the time I got that stubborn beast back home, I was ready to butcher him out of pure spite. But he was my breeding bull, so I just reinforced the fence instead." Do you handle everything on the ranch yourself? Arabella asked. Mostly. I hire help sometimes during roundup and branding, and I've got a neighbor about 5 miles east who will look after things if I need to be gone for more than a day. But generally, yes, it is just me. Keeps costs down, and like I said, I do not mind the solitude. You ever think about expanding, getting married, raising a family? The question came out before Arabella could stop herself, and she immediately felt her face burn. I apologize, that was too personal. But Quinn did not seem offended. No, it is a fair question. I suppose I have thought about it. A ranch is a lot easier to run with a partner, and I would like to have a family someday. Just have not met the right woman yet. Most of the available ladies in Leadville seem to want a man with grander prospects than a small cattle ranch and a one-room cabin. Then they are fools, Arabella said firmly. There is nothing shameful about honest work and a modest but secure life. Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, a spark of recognition and mutual interest that made Arabella's breath catch. Quinn smiled, a slow, genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. I appreciate that perspective. Thomas cleared his throat, breaking the moment. More coffee, Mr. Zeller? No, thank you, sir. I should probably be heading out. I've got a room at the boarding house for tonight, and it has been a long day. Quinn stood, offering his hand to Thomas. Thank you for the excellent meal and the company. It has been a real pleasure. The pleasure was ours, son. And thank you again for helping Arabella today. I shudder to think what might have happened otherwise. I am just glad I came along when I did. Quinn turned to Arabella, and she stood as well. Miss Carter, thank you for the invitation. It was the best meal I have had in months, and the conversation was even better. You are welcome any time you are in town, Arabella said, meaning it. Truly. I will remember that. He retrieved his hat from the hook by the door, settled it on his head, and with a final nod to them both, left. After the door closed behind him, Thomas looked at his daughter with a knowing expression. That is a good man. Yes, he is. Arabella began clearing the dishes, trying to keep her voice casual. Very kind and capable. And you find him interesting. Papa, I am not blind, girl. I saw how you two looked at each other. Thomas helped gather the plates. I am not objecting, mind you. Like I said, he seems decent. Hardworking, respectful, saved your life. Those are good qualities in a man. One dinner does not mean anything, Arabella protested, though her heart was beating a little faster at her father's approval. He was probably just being polite, if you say so. Thomas had that infuriating parental tone that suggested he knew far more than he was saying. Though I would not be surprised if he found reasons to come into town more often in the coming weeks. Arabella did not respond, but privately, she hoped her father was right. The next few weeks proved Thomas's prediction correct. Quinn came into town the following week to purchase supplies, and he made a point of stopping by the mercantile. He and Arabella talked for over an hour while he selected the items he needed, their conversation ranging from practical matters of ranching and storekeeping to more personal topics about their lives and ambitions. I would like to build a proper house eventually, Quinn told her as she tallied up his purchases. The cabin is fine for now, but it is pretty basic. Just one room, a fireplace, and a sleeping loft. Someday I want a real home with multiple rooms, glass windows, maybe even a porch where a person could sit and watch the sunset. That sounds lovely. Arabella wrapped his items in brown paper and string. Do you have the land picked out? There is a spot on a rise near the creek, good view of the mountains. I have been saving lumber whenever I can afford it. Figure in another year or two I will have enough to start building. He paused, then added, of course, it would go faster with a reason to hurry. His eyes met hers again with that same intensity from dinner, and Arabella felt her pulse quicken. "I suppose it would," she managed to say. Quinn paid for his supplies, loaded them onto his horse, and then hesitated before leaving. "Miss Carter, I was wondering if you might like to go riding this Sunday afternoon if you are not needed at the store. There are some beautiful trails in the mountains, and the wildflowers are starting to bloom. I could show you some of the country. I would like that very much." Arabella's smile was genuine and warm. "What time should I meet you? How about 1 o'clock? We could pack a picnic if you would like." 1 o'clock sounds perfect. For the rest of that week, Arabella found herself watching the calendar, counting down the days until Sunday. She told herself she was being silly, that it was just a ride in the mountains with a nice man, nothing to get excited about. But she could not deny the flutter of anticipation in her stomach every time she thought about it. Sunday dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for riding. Arabella dressed carefully in her riding skirt and a simple white blouse, pinning her hair up securely, and donning a wide-brimmed hat to protect her face from the sun. She packed a picnic basket with fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, and the last of the season's apples, along with a jar of lemonade. Quinn arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, leading a gentle mare alongside his own gelding. "Borrowed her from my neighbor," he explained. "She is calm and sure-footed on mountain trails. Her name is Daisy. Hello, Daisy." Arabella stroked the mare's soft nose, and the horse nickered gently in response. "She is lovely." They set out toward the mountains, following a trail that climbed gradually through pine and aspen groves. The air was crisp and clean at this elevation, scented with pine resin and wildflowers. Birds sang in the trees, and occasionally they spotted deer moving through the undergrowth. Quinn proved to be an excellent guide, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the area. He showed her where he had encountered a black bear with cubs the previous fall. I backed away very slowly and gave them a wide berth, and the place where he had found a gold nugget the size of his thumb, sold it, and used the money to buy my first breeding cows. They rode for about an hour before reaching a meadow high above Leadville, carpeted with wildflowers in every color imaginable: blue columbines, Indian paintbrush in vivid orange and red, purple lupines, and delicate white fairy trumpets. A small stream burbled through the middle of the meadow, and the view stretched for miles in every direction, mountains rising majestically against the endless blue sky. "Oh, Quinn, this is breathtaking." Arabella dismounted with his help, turning slowly to take in the vista. "I have lived here for 5 years and never knew this place existed. It is one of my favorite spots. I come up here sometimes when I need to think or just get away from everything." He spread a blanket he had brought in a shady spot near the stream, and they settled down with the picnic basket between them. They ate and talked, conversation flowing as easily as the stream beside them. Quinn told her more about his childhood in Pennsylvania, the son of a blacksmith who had died when Quinn was 14, leaving the family struggling. He had joined the army at 17, as much for the steady pay and meals as for any sense of patriotism or adventure. "Those years taught me discipline and showed me a lot of the country," he said, lying back on the blanket with his hat tipped over his eyes against the sun. "But they also taught me I did not want to spend my life taking orders or fighting other people's battles. When my enlistment was up, I headed west with my savings and bought the first piece of land I could afford. Best decision I ever made." "Do you ever regret not having more? A bigger ranch, more cattle, a grand house?" Arabella asked, genuinely curious. Quinn pushed his hat back and looked at her thoughtfully. "Not really. I have enough to get by, and I am building something that is mine. That matters more to me than having a big spread and being in debt to the bank for the rest of my life. I have seen too many men destroy themselves chasing after more money, more land, more everything. There is something to be said for being content with enough. My mother used to say something similar. She always told me that peace of mind was worth more than any amount of wealth. Arabella plucked a stem of grass and twirled it between her fingers. I think that is part of why I want to be more involved in the store. It is not about the money, it is about being useful, having purpose. I do not want to just be some decoration in my father's life, waiting around to get married off to whoever makes the best business connection. Is that what he wants for you? To marry you off? No, Papa is not like that. He wants me to be happy. But I know he worries about what will happen to me after he is gone. The store is successful, and there are men who have expressed interest in me who I suspect are more interested in becoming Thomas Carter's son-in-law than in actually knowing me as a person. Quinn sat up, his expression serious. Anyone who could spend time with you and only see you as a means to a business deal is a damned fool. Pardon my language. Thank you for saying that. Arabella felt warmth spread through her chest, and your language is pardoned. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the stream and the wind rustling through the wildflowers. Arabella found herself studying Quinn's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hair curled slightly at his collar, the weathered tan of his skin that spoke of days spent outdoors. There was something undeniably attractive about him, but more than that, she felt comfortable in his presence in a way she had never felt with other men. "Can I ask you something?" Quinn's voice broke the silence. "Of course." "That day at the river, when I first rode up and saw you in trouble, you were standing on that wagon seat looking determined and scared and stubborn all at once. Even though you were in real danger, you were not screaming or fainting or any of the things people might expect. You were trying to solve the problem." He turned to look at her directly. "What I am trying to say, I suppose, is that I admired your courage even before I knew anything else about you. That is not a question, is it? I am making a mess of this." Arabella laughed softly. "I think you are doing fine. And I appreciate you saying that. Though I have to admit, on the inside I was absolutely terrified. Being brave does not mean not being scared. It means doing what needs to be done even when you are scared." Quinn hesitated, then continued. "I have been thinking about you quite a bit since that day, if I am being honest. I know we barely know each other, and I am not exactly the kind of man most women dream about, but I would like to keep seeing you if you are amenable to that. Court you properly, I suppose, is what I am saying, though I am probably making a hash of the asking." Arabella's heart was racing now, but in the best possible way. "You are not making a hash of anything, and yes, I would like that very much. I have been thinking about you too, more than I probably should admit." The smile that spread across Quinn's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. Yeah. She found herself smiling back just as broadly. "Well then." Quinn stood and offered her his hand. "In that case, there is something else I want to show you before we head back." They packed up the picnic and mounted their horses again, riding further up into the mountains along a narrow trail that climbed steadily. After about 20 minutes, they emerged at an overlook that made even the meadow's view seem modest by comparison. The entire valley spread below them, Leadville visible in the distance, and mountain ranges marched away in every direction, peaks still snow-capped despite the late spring warmth. "This is the highest point on my property line," Quinn said, gesturing to encompass the vista. "Technically, that ridge over there is where my land ends. It is not much, only 160 acres total, but it includes good grazing, timber, water, and this view. It is magnificent." Arabella turned in a slow circle, trying to memorize every detail. I can see why you love it here. I wanted you to see it, to understand what I am working toward. It is not grand and it will never make me rich, but it is real and it is mine. If we are going to court properly, I want you to know exactly what kind of life I can offer. Quinn. Arabella moved closer to him, touched by his honesty. I do not need grand. I have seen what chasing after grand does to people in this town. The miners who strike it rich and lose it all at the gambling tables. The businessmen who overextend themselves and lose everything. What you have here, this land, this life you have built, it is real and solid. That matters more than grand. He reached out tentatively and took her hand, his fingers rough and calloused from ranch work but warm and gentle. You keep saying things that make me think I am the luckiest man alive. Good, because I feel pretty lucky too. She squeezed his hand, marveling at how right it felt to be standing here with him, looking out over this wild, beautiful country. They stayed until the sun began to sink toward the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The ride back to Leadville was slower, both of them reluctant to end the day. By the time they reached the Mercantile, the street lamps were being lit and the town was settling into evening. Thank you for today, Arabella said as Quinn helped her dismount. It was perfect. I am glad you enjoyed it. I was nervous about whether you would like it, if it would be too simple or boring. It was neither of those things. It was real and beautiful, just like you said. She handed him Daisy's reins. When can I see you again? I need to be at the ranch for the rest of the week, but I could come back to town next Sunday. Maybe we could have dinner again, and if the weather holds, another ride. I would love that. Quinn hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. Until next Sunday then, Arabella. Until then. She touched her cheek where his lips had been, feeling the warmth and the promise of that simple gesture. She watched him ride away leading Daisy, then turned to find her father standing in the doorway of the store, trying and failing to hide a knowing smile. Do not say anything, Arabella warned, though she was smiling too broadly to be serious. I was not going to say a word. Except perhaps that you are glowing like a lantern and it is good to see you happy. Thomas held the door open for her. He is a good man, Bella, I approve. I am glad because I like him very much, more than I have ever liked anyone. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Quinn came to town every Sunday, and sometimes mid-week if he could spare the time from the ranch. They went on more rides into the mountains, exploring different trails and hidden valleys. They had dinners with Thomas, who clearly enjoyed Quinn's company and treated him more like a son than a potential suitor. And slowly, surely, what had started as attraction and interest deepened into something much more profound. Quinn told Arabella about his dreams for the ranch, his plans to expand the herd and eventually build that proper house he had mentioned. Arabella shared her hopes of taking a more active role in the Mercantile, perhaps even opening a second location in one of the nearby mining camps. They talked about their fears, their past heartbreaks, their beliefs about what made life worthwhile. I never expected to find someone like you, Quinn admitted one evening as they sat on a bench outside the Mercantile, watching the stars come out. Someone who understands that success is not just about money or status, but about building a life that means something. I never expected to find someone who saw me as a full person, not just a daughter or a potential wife or a business asset, Arabella replied, leaning her head against his shoulder in a gesture that would have shocked the town's gossips but felt completely natural to her. You listen when I talk about business and ranching. You take my ideas seriously. You treat me like an equal partner in our conversations. Because you are my equal, Arabella, in every way that matters. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I am in love with you. I probably have been since that day at the river, though it took me a while to admit it to myself. Arabella's breath caught. They had been courting for 2 months now, but this was the first time either of them had spoken of love. She sat up to look at him directly, seeing the vulnerability and hope in his storm-gray eyes. I love you too, she said, the words feeling both momentous and completely right. I think I started falling in love when you handed me that rope and told me to tie it to the wagon frame. You did not try to take over or make me feel incompetent. You just helped me help myself. Quinn cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her, not on the cheek this time but on the lips, a kiss that held all the emotion and promise of the words they had just exchanged. Arabella kissed him back, feeling like her heart might burst from the joy and certainty of it all. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Arabella. I know we have not been courting that long, and maybe I should wait and do this properly with flowers and speeches, but I do not want to wait. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night. I want to build that house together and fill it with a family. Say yes. Yes. Arabella did not hesitate. Yes, Quinn Zeller, I will marry you. Absolutely yes. His whoop of joy echoed down the street, causing several passers-by to turn and stare. Quinn stood up, pulling Arabella with him, and spun her in a circle before kissing her again. You have made me the happiest man alive, and you have made me the happiest woman. Arabella laughed, dizzy with joy and movement. We should tell Papa. They found Thomas in the store's back office, going over the books. He looked up as they burst in, took one look at their faces, and started laughing. I take it this calls for a celebration, she said yes. Quinn could not seem to stop grinning. I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. Of course she said yes. Anyone with eyes could see you two were meant for each other. Thomas came around the desk and shook Quinn's hand firmly, then pulled him into a brief hug. Welcome to the family, son. I could not ask for a better match for my daughter. Thank you, sir. That means the world to me. Quinn's voice was thick with emotion. I promise I will take good care of her, do everything in my power to make her happy. I know you will, and she will do the same for you. Thomas turned to his daughter. Your mother would have loved him, Bella. She always said you would know the right man when you found him because he would see the real you and love you for it, not despite it. Arabella hugged her father tightly. I wish she could be here for this. She is, in her way, I believe that. Thomas cleared his throat, clearly fighting emotion. Now then, we should start planning. When are you thinking for the wedding? Soon, Quinn said immediately, then looked at Arabella. Unless you want a long engagement, I just do not see the point in waiting if we are both certain. Soon sounds perfect to me. Arabella threaded her fingers through his. A month. That would give us time to prepare, but not so long that we are waiting forever. A month it is. Thomas nodded decisively. We will need to arrange for the church, though Reverend Morris can be flexible. And we should host a proper reception, let people celebrate with you. Nothing too elaborate, Arabella said. I do not want some grand society wedding, just family and friends, something meaningful. We can make that happen. Thomas was already making mental lists, she could tell. What about the living arrangements? Will you be moving to the ranch, Bella? Yes, if that is all right with you, Papa. I know that leaves you alone in the apartment, and I can still help at the store whenever you need me. Stop right there. Thomas held up a hand. You are starting a new life with your husband. That comes first. I will manage the store just fine. Maybe I will even hire someone to help with the heavy work. Let this old back rest a bit, and I will hardly be alone. I have friends, the community, and you are only 10 miles away. We will see each other plenty. The next month passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Arabella sewed herself a simple but beautiful wedding dress in cream-colored silk, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Quinn spent most of his time at the ranch, working frantically to make improvements to the cabin so it would be more suitable for two people. He built a proper kitchen area with a new stove he bought from Thomas, constructed a privacy screen around the sleeping loft, and even made a set of furniture including a table, chairs, and a rocking chair. "I know it is not the house I want to build yet," he told Arabella when she rode out with her father to see the improvements a week before the wedding. "But it is clean and weather-tight, and I have tried to make it comfortable. Once we are married and I can save more with both of us working, we will start on the new house. Quinn, it is wonderful." Arabella walked through the space, admiring everything he had done. The cabin was indeed basic, but it was clear he had put love and care into every improvement. Wildflowers sat in a jar on the table, and he had even hung curtains on the small windows. "I love it. I love that you built all of this with your own hands. I wanted it to be right for you." He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I want everything to be right for you. Everything is already right because I am with you." She turned in his arms and kissed him. "The setting does not matter. You are what matters." The wedding took place on a Sunday afternoon in late June in the small church on Harrison Avenue. The weather cooperated perfectly, with clear skies and warm sunshine. Arabella wore her cream silk dress with her mother's pearl necklace and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Quinn had picked that morning from the high meadow where they had shared their first picnic. Quinn stood at the altar in a new suit, his dark hair neatly combed and his face cleanly shaven, looking nervous and happy and incredibly handsome. When Arabella walked down the aisle on her father's arm, his expression transformed into such pure joy that several women in the congregation started crying. Thomas placed Arabella's hand in Quinn's with a father's blessing, then took his seat in the front pew. Reverend Morris kept the ceremony short and meaningful, speaking about partnership and respect and the importance of building a life together based on mutual support and love. When it came time for the vows, both Quinn and Arabella spoke in steady, clear voices, meaning every word. "I, Quinn Zeller, take you, Arabella Carter, to be my wife. I promise to love you, honor you, respect you, and stand beside you through all of life's joys and challenges. You are my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. I am yours from this day forward, for all the days we are given. I, Arabella Carter, take you, Quinn Zeller, to be my husband. I promise to love you, honor you, respect you, and stand beside you through all of life's joys and challenges. You are my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. I am yours from this day forward, for all the days we are given. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Quinn, you may kiss your bride." Quinn did so gladly, pulling Arabella close and kissing her with such tenderness and love that there was not a dry eye in the church. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears of happiness. The reception was held at the hotel dining room, which Thomas had rented out for the occasion. There was food and music and dancing, with what seemed like half of Leadville turning out to celebrate. Men who bought supplies from the mercantile, miners and ranchers and businessmen, came to congratulate the couple and wish them well. Women brought gifts, mostly practical items for setting up a household, but given with genuine warmth. Arabella danced with her father first, a bittersweet moment as Thomas struggled not to cry. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you have become," he whispered as they moved slowly across the floor, "and so happy that you found someone who truly deserves you. Thank you for everything, Papa, for supporting us, for welcoming Quinn, for understanding why I need to do this. You are my daughter and I want you to be happy. That is all that has ever mattered." He kissed her forehead. "Now go dance with your husband and start your new life." Arabella danced with Quinn next, and then with half a dozen other men, but she kept returning to Quinn, drawn back to him like a compass needle to north. Finally, as the evening wore on, they slipped away from the reception, laughing like children playing hooky as they ran down the street toward where Quinn's wagon waited, packed with Arabella's belongings and supplies for their trip to the ranch. "Are you ready, Mrs. Zeller?" Quinn asked as he helped her up onto the wagon seat. "More ready than I have ever been for anything, Mr. Zeller." Arabella settled beside him, her wedding dress still pristine despite the evening's celebrations. "Take me home." The ride to the ranch took 2 hours in the moonlight, following roads that Arabella had traveled before but which felt entirely different now. This was not a visit or a courtship call. This was going home to the place where she would build her life, to the man who was now her husband. The thought filled her with excitement and joy rather than nervousness. They reached the ranch as midnight approached, and Quinn carried her over the threshold of the cabin, both of them laughing at the tradition even as they honored it. He set her down gently in the middle of the room, and they stood there for a moment, taking in the significance of this moment. "Welcome home, Arabella." "Welcome home to you too, Quinn. Our home now." He cupped her face and kissed her deeply, and Arabella kissed him back with all the love and passion she felt. This was right. She knew it with every fiber of her being. This man, this place, this life they were beginning together. It was not grand or glamorous, but it was real and it was theirs. The first months of marriage brought adjustments and joys in equal measure. Arabella learned the rhythms of ranch life, rising before dawn to help Quinn with morning chores, learning to care for the cattle and horses, mastering skills she had never needed in town. It was hard work, physically demanding in ways that keeping shop had never been, but she loved it. She loved working alongside Quinn, their partnership extending into every aspect of daily life. Quinn, for his part, delighted in having someone to share his life with after years of solitude. He taught Arabella everything he knew about ranching, patient with her mistakes and generous with his praise for her successes. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fireplace, planning improvements to the ranch and reading aloud to each other from books Arabella brought from town. She also continued to help her father at the mercantile, riding into Leadville twice a week to handle the books and assist with major purchasing decisions. Thomas welcomed her input and treated Quinn like the son he had never had, consulting with him on matters of business and gradually including him more in the store's operations. "I am thinking about what happens down the road," Thomas told them one day over Sunday dinner in his apartment above the store. "I am not as young as I used to be, and I would like to know the business will stay in the family. Quinn, you have a good head for commerce, and Arabella knows the store inside and out. I would like to make you both partners, start transitioning some of the ownership to you." "Papa, that is incredibly generous," Arabella said, moved by the offer. "It is also good sense. You two could eventually run a supply operation that serves not just the store but provides goods to the mining camps and ranches throughout the area. Quinn knows the ranching community and Arabella knows the town trade. Together, you could expand in ways I never imagined." Quinn looked thoughtful. "I will admit, I have been thinking along similar lines. The ranch provides a good base, but it would take years to expand the cattle operation enough to make real money. But if we combined ranching with a supply business, used the ranch as a distribution point for goods going to the high country camps and settlements, that could work. We would be providing a real service and building something substantial." "Exactly what I was thinking." Thomas looked pleased. "We can work out the details over time, but I wanted you to know my intentions. This business will be yours someday, and I would like to see you take it to the next level while I am still around to help." They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing possibilities and making plans. Arabella felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of building something even bigger than what her father had created, of truly being a full partner in a significant enterprise. And the fact that she would be doing it alongside Quinn, combining their different skills and perspectives, made it even better. As autumn painted the mountains in gold and crimson, Arabella began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited to be sure before saying anything to Quinn, but when 2 months had passed with no monthly courses and she began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew it was time to share the news. She planned it carefully, making Quinn's favorite meal of pot roast with all the trimmings. After dinner, as they sat together in the rocking chair he had built, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "There is something I need to tell you. We are going to have a baby. Sometime in the spring, I think." Quinn's eyes went wide, and then he let out a whoop of joy that probably startled every cow within a mile. He stood up, lifting Arabella with him, then immediately set her down carefully as if she had become made of glass. "Are you sure? Are you feeling all right? Should you be working so hard?" "We need to, Quinn." Arabella laughed and took his face in her hands. "I am pregnant, not dying. Women have babies all the time and continue working until the last possible moment. I am healthy and strong, and I am not going to spend the next 6 months sitting in a chair doing nothing. But you need to be careful, you and the baby both." His voice was full of wonder and concern. "This is our child, Arabella, our baby. I know, and I promise I will be sensible, but I am not going to stop living my life." She kissed him softly. "Are you happy about this?" "Happy." "I am thrilled beyond words." He placed his hand gently on her stomach again. "A baby, our baby, we are going to be parents. We are you scared?" "Terrified," he admitted, "but also excited. We will figure it out together just like we figure out everything else." They told Thomas the next Sunday, and the older man actually teared up with joy. "A grandchild! Lord, I wish your mother were here to see this, Bella. She would have been over the moon." "I wish she were here too." Arabella hugged her father. "But I will tell our child all about their grandmother, about how brave and kind and loving she was. And I will spoil this grandchild absolutely rotten," Thomas declared. "It is my right as a grandfather." Quinn laughed. "We are counting on it, actually." The winter was mild that year, which was fortunate given Arabella's condition. She continued to help around the ranch and make her weekly trips to the mercantile, though Quinn fussed over her constantly. As her belly grew and spring approached, they prepared as best they could for the baby's arrival. Quinn built a cradle from pine, sanding it smooth and carving small designs into the headboard. Arabella sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how something so small could bring such overwhelming love. "What do you think it will be?" Quinn asked one evening as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her round stomach. "Boy or girl? I do not know. Does it matter to you?" "Not even a little bit. As long as you both are healthy, that is all I care about." He felt the baby kick against his palm and grinned. "Strong takes after the mother or the father. You are pretty strong yourself." Arabella covered his hand with hers. "I keep thinking about that day at the river, how you came riding up like some kind of hero in a dime novel. If you had not been there, none of this would have happened. I would not have met you, fallen in love with you, married you. There would be no baby. I think about that too sometimes. What if I had decided to come into town a day earlier or later? What if I had taken a different route? All these tiny choices that led us to exactly the right place at exactly the right time." He kissed her temple. "I do not believe in much when it comes to fate or destiny, but I believe in us. What we have, what we are building, it is real and strong. like that river current that brought us together. That is beautiful." Arabella turned in his arms as much as her pregnant belly would allow. "You always say I have a way with words, but you do too when it matters." "Only because you inspire me," he kissed her softly. "I love you, Arabella Zeller, more than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too, with everything I am." The baby, a boy they named Thomas Quinn Zeller after both grandfathers, arrived on a bright April morning in 1883, almost exactly a year after his parents had first met at the river crossing. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Quinn feared he might lose both Arabella and the child. But Arabella was as strong as he had always known her to be, and with the help of the doctor from Leadville and several experienced women from town, she brought their son safely into the world. Quinn held his son for the first time with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the reality of this tiny person who depended on them completely. "He is perfect," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Absolutely perfect. He is ours," Arabella said from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "Our perfect little boy." Thomas Carter met his namesake grandson later that day and wept openly as he held the baby. "He has your mother's eyes," he told Arabella. "The same gray-blue color. It is like having a piece of her back." Baby Thomas proved to be a healthy, hungry infant with powerful lungs. The cabin rang with his cries at all hours, and both new parents stumbled through the first weeks in a fog of exhaustion and overwhelming love. But they managed, taking turns walking the floor with the baby, supporting each other through the difficult moments, and marveling together at every tiny milestone. As young Thomas grew from infant to baby to toddler, the ranch and the business grew as well. Quinn and Arabella implemented their plan to use the ranch as a distribution point for supplies going to the remote mining camps and settlements in the high country. It proved even more successful than they had hoped, and within 2 years they were running a thriving operation that required hiring several employees. True to his word, Quinn began building the house he had dreamed of on that rise near the creek. This time, he had help from hired carpenters and plenty of lumber, so the work went quickly. The house rose over the course of one summer, a proper 2-story home with 4 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a parlor, and that porch Quinn had wanted where they could sit and watch the sunset over the mountains. They moved in just before Arabella discovered she was pregnant again, and their daughter Elena arrived the following spring. She was followed 2 years later by another son, James, and then by another daughter, Margaret, completing their family. The years rolled by in a blur of work and family, challenges and joys. The business continued to grow, eventually expanding to include a second store in a nearby mining town. Thomas Carter remained active in the business until his death at age 73, content in the knowledge that everything he had built would continue with the family he loved. "You gave me a son I never had and grandchildren who are the light of my life," he told Quinn a few days before he passed away peacefully in his sleep. "You made my daughter happier than I ever saw her. That is everything a father could want." His funeral was well attended, proof of the respect and affection the community had felt for him. Arabella mourned deeply, but found comfort in Quinn's steady presence, and in the knowledge that her father had lived to see his grandchildren grow and his business thrive. On what would have been Thomas's 75th birthday, Arabella and Quinn took their children on a ride up to the meadow where they had shared their first picnic all those years ago. The children ran through the wildflowers while their parents sat on a blanket, watching with contentment. "Do you ever think about that day at the river?" Arabella asked, leaning against Quinn's shoulder. They were both in their 40s now, with silver threading through their hair and lines around their eyes, but their love had only deepened with time. All the time, Quinn admitted. It was the day my whole life changed, the day I found you. Everything good in my life came from that moment. I was so scared, Arabella remembered. The water was rising and the horses were panicking, and I thought I was going to lose everything. And then you rode up and took charge, and I remember thinking, who is this man who appears exactly when I need him? I remember seeing you standing on that wagon seat, refusing to give up even though the situation looked impossible. And I thought, this is someone special, someone strong and brave and stubborn as hell, he chuckled. I was not wrong. Young Thomas, now 15 and already showing signs of inheriting his father's height and his mother's sharp mind, called out, "Papa, can we ride to the overlook?" "May we?" Arabella corrected automatically. "May we ride to the overlook?" Thomas amended with a grin. "If your mother says it is all right, go ahead, but stay together and be careful on the trail." Arabella watched her children mount their horses, the older ones helping the younger, all of them competent riders thanks to growing up on the ranch. After they rode off, Quinn pulled Arabella closer. "We have done all right, haven't we? Built a good life, raised good children, created something that will outlast us. We have done better than all right. We have done wonderfully." Arabella turned to kiss him, as comfortable and natural as breathing after 20 years of marriage. "Do you remember what I said to you back when we were courting, when you brought me up here the first time? You said a lot of things that day. Which particular thing are you referring to?" "I told you that you and your ranch, this life you were building, it was like a current carrying me forward into something new and real. That you were the current that would carry me toward my future." Quinn's eyes grew soft with memory. "I remember now. Though I think we became each other's current, pushing each other forward, making each other stronger. We did." Arabella looked out over the mountains, over the land they had worked and loved and built their lives upon. "That day at the river when I was struggling and scared and about to lose everything, you were not just someone who saved me. You were the current that carried me to exactly where I needed to be. You still are, every single day. And you are mine." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "My current, my anchor, my home. Everything that matters." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun moved across the sky, listening to the distant sounds of their children's laughter echoing from the overlook. This was their legacy, not just the land or the business or the money, but these children and this love and the life they had built together from that one chance meeting at a swollen river crossing. The years continued to roll by, bringing more grandchildren as their own children grew up and married and started families of their own. Thomas took over the main mercantile in Leadville, showing the same integrity and business acumen his grandfather had displayed. Eleanor married a mining engineer and moved to Denver, though she visited often. James decided he preferred ranching to commerce and took over the daily operations of the cattle business. Margaret became a teacher and opened a school in one of the mining camps, bringing education to children who otherwise would have had none. Quinn and Arabella moved gradually into roles as advisors rather than day-to-day managers, though they never fully retired. They were too interested in the business and too invested in seeing it continue to thrive to step away completely. But they also made time for themselves, for long rides through the mountains they both loved, for quiet evenings on that porch Quinn had built, for visits with their expanding family. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration that seemed to involve half of Leadville. The party was held at the ranch, with people spilling out of the house onto the lawn, tables groaning under the weight of food, and music and laughter filling the warm summer evening. 30 years, Arabella marveled, standing with Quinn slightly apart from the crowd, watching their family and friends celebrate. How did we get here so fast? One day at a time, I suppose, though it does not feel like 30 years. It feels like just yesterday I was riding up to that river and seeing a stubborn, beautiful woman refusing to let a wagon full of supplies beat her. I was not refusing to let it beat me. I was actively being beaten by it. You are the one who saved the day. We saved each other that day. And every day since. Quinn took her hand, pulling her toward the makeshift dance floor someone had set up in the yard. Dance with me, Mrs. Zeller, always, Mr. Zeller, always. They danced as the sun set behind the mountains, surrounded by the family and community they had helped build, in the home they had created together. It was not the life either of them had imagined when they were young, but it was so much better than anything they could have dreamed. "Do you have any regrets?" Arabella asked as they swayed to the music. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Quinn thought for a long moment, then shook his head. "Not a single one. This life, our life together, it is everything I never knew I wanted. You are everything I never knew I needed. That is exactly how I feel." Arabella rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "When I think about that girl at the river crossing, so desperate to prove herself, so scared but trying not to show it, I want to tell her it is all going to work out better than she can imagine. That the man riding toward her through the current is not just saving her in that moment, but setting both of them on a course toward something real and lasting. And I would tell that cowboy who was just planning to buy supplies and head back to his lonely cabin that his whole life is about to change. That the woman he is about to meet will become his partner, his love, his home in all the ways that matter. Their children and grandchildren joined them on the dance floor, multiple generations moving together under the stars. Young Thomas danced with his own wife, their baby daughter cradled between them. Eleanor waltzed past with her husband, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. James spun his mother around in an enthusiastic, if somewhat clumsy turn, before returning her to Quinn's arms. Margaret partnered with one of the miners from her school district, deep in conversation about expanding the school. "We made this," Quinn said, his voice full of wonder as he looked around at all the people, all the life and love they had created. All of this came from one moment at a river crossing. All of this came from two people who were brave enough to help each other and smart enough to see what they had found," Arabella corrected. "The river crossing was just the beginning. We built everything else together, day by day, choice by choice. You are right, as usual." Quinn pulled her close as a new song began, something slow and sweet. "I love you, Arabella, just as much today as the day we married, probably more. I love you too, more than words can properly express." She kissed him softly, not caring who might see. After 30 years of marriage, they had long since stopped worrying about what people thought. The party continued late into the night, but eventually people began to drift away, heading home or to rooms in town. Their children hugged them goodnight and made their own departures, leaving Quinn and Arabella alone on the porch of the house they had built together. They sat in the rocking chairs they had commissioned years ago, watching the stars wheel overhead in the clear mountain sky. The night was cool but not cold, perfect for sitting outside wrapped in blankets and each other's company. 30 years, Arabella said again, still marveling at it. And it went so fast. The children are grown, we are grandparents, we are approaching old age, and I feel like I was just that young woman at the river yesterday. Time moves differently when you are happy, I think. The days can feel long, but the years fly by. Quinn reached over and took her hand. Though I will say, I am looking forward to the years ahead just as much as I have treasured the years behind us. Growing old with you, watching our grandchildren grow up, seeing what our children build with the foundation we gave them. There is still so much to look forward to. There is. Arabella squeezed his hand. Though I will admit, some days I miss the simplicity of those early years when it was just you and me in that one-room cabin, figuring out life together. We can still have that. We have got this whole house to ourselves most of the time now that the children are raised. We can take trips up to the mountains, spend days doing nothing but enjoying each other's company. The business practically runs itself at this point. That sounds perfect. She stood and held out her hand to him. Come on, husband. Take me inside and remind me why I fell in love with you all those years ago. Quinn rose with a grin and swept her into his arms, carrying her across the threshold just as he had on their wedding night 3 decades before. As my lady commands. They continued on together through the seasons of life, facing the inevitable challenges of age and loss, but meeting them as they had always met everything, together, and with unwavering support for one another. When Quinn developed arthritis in his hands that made some ranch work difficult, Arabella massaged his fingers each night and helped him find new ways to contribute. When Arabella's eyesight began to fail, making the detailed bookwork she had always enjoyed more difficult, Quinn read the ledgers aloud to her and served as her hands for the fine work. They celebrated their 40th anniversary with a quieter gathering, just immediate family and a few close friends. Their 50th anniversary brought a larger celebration, as the town of Leadville itself joined in honoring the couple who had become institutions in the community through their business dealings, their fairness, and their example of what a strong marriage could be. 50 years, the mayor said in his speech at that celebration. Quinn and Arabella Zeller have shown us all what it means to build a life together based on mutual respect, hard work, and genuine love. Their business has provided employment for dozens of families and reliable supplies to the entire region. Their children have grown up to be productive, caring members of our community. And their marriage has been an inspiration to younger couples, showing what is possible when two people truly commit to each other and to building something meaningful. Quinn and Arabella sat at the head table, holding hands and smiling through the speeches and toasts. They were both in their 70s now, their hair white and their faces lined, but the love in their eyes when they looked at each other was as strong as it had been 50 years before at the river crossing. You know what I remember most clearly from that day? Arabella whispered to Quinn during a lull in the speeches. Not the fear or the cold water or even how handsome you looked riding up on that black horse. What I remember is the moment after we reached the shore safely, when you looked at me and I knew, absolutely knew, that you saw me as a capable person who had simply needed help, not as some helpless female who needed saving. That was the moment I started falling in love with you. And I remember thinking this woman has steel in her spine and fire in her eyes, and if I am very lucky, maybe she will let me be part of her life. Best decision I ever made was asking you to dinner that day. Quinn lifted her hand and kissed it gently, and every day since then has proved me right. They died within 6 months of each other, both having lived into their 80s, both having had the blessing of knowing their great-grandchildren. Quinn went first, peacefully in his sleep in the house he had built. Arabella followed not long after, having lost her will to fight once her partner of over 60 years was gone. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with headstones that read simply Quinn Zeller, beloved husband, father, and grandfather, and Arabella Carter Zeller, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. But it was the inscription they shared on the base of the joined monument that told their real story. Met at a river crossing, May 1882. Bound by love that carried them through every current of life, together always. Their descendants continued to run the businesses they had built, passing down not just the stores and the ranch but the values that Quinn and Arabella had lived by: integrity, hard work, fairness, and the understanding that true success is measured not in money or status but in the lives you touch and the love you share. The ranch expanded over the generations, and additional stores opened in other mining towns as Colorado continued to grow. But the foundation Quinn and Arabella had laid remained solid. Years after their deaths, the spot where they first met at the Arkansas River crossing became something of a local landmark. Couples would go there on anniversaries or when facing difficult decisions, remembering the story of the merchant's daughter and the cowboy who met by chance and built a love that lasted a lifetime. A small plaque was eventually placed near the crossing with the inscription, "Here." In May 1882, Arabella Carter met Quinn Zeller when her wagon ran into trouble in high water. From that chance meeting grew a love story and a legacy that helped build this community. May we all be so fortunate as to find our current, the person who carries us forward toward our best selves. The story of Quinn and Arabella became part of Leadville's history, told and retold to new generations as an example of what the Wild West could be at its best, not just a place of violence and lawlessness, but a place where hardworking people could build meaningful lives, where chance meetings could lead to lasting love, and where partnership and mutual respect could create something enduring. Their great-great-grandchildren still operated a general store in Leadville over a century later, with photos of Quinn and Arabella prominently displayed behind the counter. The ranch remained in the family as well, though it had diversified over the years to include tourism and sustainable agriculture, alongside traditional cattle ranching. And every generation was told the story of how it all began with a young woman who refused to give up even when her wagon was sinking, and a cowboy who rode through a raging current to help someone in need. It was a love story for the ages, but more than that, it was a story about partnership and building something meaningful together. About two people who saw each other clearly and loved what they saw, who worked side by side through challenges and triumphs, who raised a family and built a business and created a legacy not just of financial success, but of human decency and genuine affection. In the end, Arabella had been right about the current. Quinn had been the force that carried her forward from that frightened girl at the river crossing to the confident woman who helped build a commercial empire. But he had been right too. They had become each other's current, each pushing the other toward growth and strength, each providing the support and love that allowed the other to flourish. Their love story did not involve dramatic rescues or grand romantic gestures, no secret identities or obstacles beyond the ordinary challenges of life. Instead, it was built on daily choices, on respect and honesty, on working together toward shared goals, on never taking each other for granted. It was built on Quinn getting up before dawn to do the hardest ranch work, so Arabella could focus on the business she loved. It was built on Arabella learning to rope cattle and mend fences because she wanted to share all aspects of Quinn's life. It was built on both of them making compromises and sacrifices, not because they had to, but because they wanted to make the other person happy. It was built on remembering, even 50 or 60 years later, what it felt like to be young and in love, standing in a wildflower meadow or sitting on a porch watching the sunset, knowing with absolute certainty that this person beside you was your home, your partner, your forever. And it was built on the simple truth that sometimes, when you least expect it, when you are scared and struggling and not sure you can manage alone, exactly the right person appears at exactly the right moment. Not to save you, Not to take over your life, but to offer help and then step back, to see your strength and honor it, to become your partner rather than your rescuer. That was what Quinn and Arabella had found that day at the river crossing, the beginning of a partnership that would last a lifetime and create ripples that extended far beyond their own lives. They had been the current that carried each other forward, and together they had flowed onward, gathering strength and purpose, nurturing everything in their path, until finally they merged with the greater stream of history, leaving behind only the legacy of having flowed well and loved deeply. Their story ended as all stories must, with death and the passing of time. But the love they shared and the life they built together continued on through their descendants, through the businesses they founded, through the community they helped shape, and through the example they set for what marriage and partnership could be when two people truly saw and valued each other. Somewhere in the mountains above Leadville, the Arkansas River still flows swift and cold each spring when the snow melts. The crossing where they met has changed over the years, modernized with a proper bridge and guardrails. But the water still runs, still carries its own current, still moves ever forward as all rivers must. And somewhere beyond time and memory, two souls who found each other in that current continue their journey together, bound by love that proved stronger than death, partners for eternity just as they were partners in life. The merchant's daughter and the cowboy, carried forward together by the current of their love, forever home,